Today we're just going to need a piece of paper and a pen or marker, anything to write with, any kind of paper. My name's Emily Ann. I'm a PhD student in Heather Sheardown's lab at McMaster. I'm doing my PhD in chemical engineering, and I did my master's in biomedical engineering. And both of these degrees I looked at eye research, so studying the eye, how it works, how it develops, ocular diseases, and treatments for ocular diseases. So today I'm going to talk about the eye because it's an area of research that I'm very interested in, obviously, and we're going to talk about some optical illusions and how the eye works. So the first optical illusion we're going to do is called hole in hand, and it's super easy. All you need is a piece of paper, and you're just going to roll that paper into a tube like this. And how this works is you're going to put the tube up to your right eye, and you're going to look at your computer screen or at something in the distance. You can look at a window if you're near a window, anywhere you want to look, and you're going to take your left hand and put it against the tube. And so what you're going to want to do is you can move your hand up and down this tube, and you'll find a certain point where it actually looks like there's a hole in your hand. So both eyes are open during this experiment, and you just move your hand up and down this tube to see that optical illusion happen. So what's happening here is that we have two eyes, and each eye sees separately. So we actually get two different images happening at once, and then our brain processes that information and makes one picture. So what's happening is your one eye that's looking through a tube gets that one image at the end of that tube, and then your other eye is open and sees your hand. So then your brain actually combines those two images and puts it so that it looks like there's a hole through your hand. You can do it with the other eye as well. It's really easy. It's a fun way to kind of trick your brain into seeing something that it's not really seeing, and it's just combining those two images together. And if anyone has any questions about binocular images or how your vision kind of works more, feel free to put them in the comments. And if I don't get to them today, I'll come back and make sure I go through those comments and answer any questions. And so while each eye sees two separate images, they both kind of work the same. So when we're using our eyes, light passes through the pupil, which is that hole in your eye that you can see that gets smaller in really bright light and really big at night. And so what happens is you actually project all that light onto the back of your eye, which is called the retina. And so the retina is made up of all these different cells that take that information and send it to the brain. And how that works is you have what's called an optic nerve, and that takes all the information from all these different cells, and that's what sends the information to the back of your brain to actually show you the image you're seeing. And so we have what's called a blind spot, which is where that optic nerve goes back to the brain. There's no cells right there. It's just the ends of all the cells form this almost rope-like structure, and that goes all the way back to your brain. And so when you look into the eye, the blind spot's actually off-centered a little bit. So you can actually find where your blind spot is with a really easy activity. And all you need to do is draw an X and a dot on a piece of paper, and I'll show you what that looks like. So just an X and a little dot. And what you're going to want to do is hold your paper about arm's length away, and you want to close your left eye, and you want to look at the X. So your X should be on the left side, and you're going to close your left eye, look at the X, and slowly bring the paper towards you. And you'll find a certain point where that dot seems to disappear. You can also do it the opposite way. If you close your right eye and look at the dot with your left eye when it's on the right-hand side and bring the paper slowly towards you, you'll lose the X. So either way, you're going to lose one of those shapes depending on what eyes open and close. You might need to play around for a minute or two and kind of find that perfect paper position. But once you find it, it's really neat. You lose that dot or X. And so that's just, again, like I said, with that blind spot, it's where your optic nerve actually goes through to the back of your brain. So no cells are there. So when you move that paper perfectly, you can't see that shape because it's lined up perfectly with your blind spot. And then another way to trick your brain is to draw a line through the X and the dot. And I'll show you what I mean. So you just draw a line through your X and your dot. It doesn't need to be perfectly straight. And you're going to do the exact same thing. So if you look at your X with your right eye open and your left eye closed, and slowly bring this paper towards you, you'll lose the dot, but it looks like that line actually continues. So what's happening there is your brain will fill in information that it doesn't necessarily see. So your brain wants to have a full picture, and so when you lose that dot, the line gets connected because your brain assumes that that line is actually going straight through when you're actually losing a little piece of that puzzle. So again, this one's really easy. It's just an X and a dot on a piece of paper with a line through it, and all you're going to do is hold it about arm's length away. You're going to look at the X with your right eye, close your left eye, and slowly move it towards you, and eventually you'll lose that dot, but the line will continue through. So that's just your blind spot. Again, it's just how your brain gets that information from your eyes. Another really super easy way to kind of trick your brain with the blind spot as well as that binocular vision is if you stick your two fingers, again, about arm's length away, and you want to leave a little gap, if you can see that, and you're going to slowly bring your fingers towards yourself with that gap, and eventually it's going to look like you have a kind of weird little middle finger. You can also do this with two pens or two markers or pencils. And so what's happening there is, again, your brain's taking these two images and trying to kind of fill in that information in the middle and make one cohesive image. So again, it's just stick your fingers out with a little bit of a gap and slowly bring them towards you, looking at those fingers, and you'll find a spot where it looks like you have a floating little middle finger in between your two fingers. So just easy ways to trick your eyes. There's lots going on and your brain's trying to make sense of what's happening around you as best as it can and as quickly as it can. So it's taking all those signals from all those different cells in the back of the eye, like we talked about in the retina, and it's trying to take all of that information by millions of cells and try and send that all back to the brain as one cohesive image. And because we have two of them, it's going to take each of those single images and try to make one. So there's just some really easy ways to kind of play around with your eyes and kind of learn how vision works. It's really interesting. It can be very complicated, but it's also very important. We use it every day. So they're just easy ways to kind of play around and learn kind of how your eyes work. There's lots of different ones. There's lots of books, and you can look online too and just Google optical illusions that trick your brain into seeing one image or both, or kind of flipping back and forth. So there's lots of sources for that online too if you want to look. And I know there's lots of books that you could get at the library that also have all these different kind of optical illusions. And again, it just plays with how our brain and our eyes work.